Call of Duty is back, and this time we are headed to World War II, where Granddad is using his diamond camo sniper rifle to kill Nazis. Didn't remember Granddad ever talking about that. But anyway, jokes aside, following what many consider one of the worst Call of Duty games made, many players are looking for a bounce back year, and fortunately Call of Duty World War II is by far an improvement over Infinity Ward's Infinite Warfare, although that wasn't really that difficult to accomplish. Even with being an improvement, Call of Duty World War II does fall short of being the savior for this long-fatigued franchise, but it sure as hell can be a fun time. Now, Call of Duty World War II features 3 modes: Nazi zombies, multiplayer, and a campaign. We're going to start off with the campaign, which is about 5 to 6 hours of playtime and features some absolutely beautiful cutscenes which really emphasize the war setting. We assume the role of Daniels, a US soldier of the 1st Infantry Division, and the campaign starts off with a bang as we storm the beaches of Normandy and make our way through France to Germany. Within the beginning of the campaign, we get an idea of our main cast, as we have Lieutenant Turner, Sergeant Pearson, Zussman, Stiles, and Alo. As we go through the story, more characters are introduced, but for the most part this is our main cast. Now, what I actually found really interesting was each of our team members has different perks that refreshes on a timer. Zussman can give us health packs, Turner gives us ammo, Pearson highlights enemies for us, and so on and so forth. With Call of Duty World War II not having regenerating health, I found health packs from Zussman extremely useful, and the same goes for ammo from Turner, which seemed always scarce when I needed it for whatever weapon I was using. The gameplay, alike to almost all Call of Duty single players, is a lot of fun, and Call of Duty World War II doesn't just have us playing as Daniels, as there are a few other missions in which we play as a spy, fighter pilot, and tank commander, which we assume these roles to assist Daniels in what his team is doing. I really did enjoy the variety that this campaign offered, although it didn't work all that well at times, specifically stealth. Now, aside from the gameplay, let's get to the actual story. Daniels is our main protagonist, as I mentioned earlier, and the story really concentrates on his relationship with Zussman. Although, even though you can tell the writers really want you to see these characters as brothers, it just never really hits for me, and I really think it's because the whole cast just doesn't get enough time to develop. As you play through the story, you'll really see the cruelty and the insanity that is Pearson, and overall his impact on the story again just never really hits. There's moments you can tell we're really supposed to be emotional, but because of the lack of cutscenes and character development, it just never delivers. I will also mention that the story isn't about our team saving the world and or trying to kill Hitler. It's more about specific missions that help the ultimate cause of stopping the Nazis. Outside of the war, we do get some scenes within Daniel's life, which includes his wife and brother. His brother specifically is a driving force for him and does have a big impact on the story. Now, overall, Call of Duty World War II wants to be like the film Saving Private Ryan, but it really ends up being like a Michael Bay film. The ending parts of the story just made absolutely no sense, and it feels like the writers wanted to show the true horrors of World War II, but they didn't at the same time. The last time the Call of Duty franchise really supplied an oh shit moment for myself was the No Russian mission in Modern Warfare 2. Since then, it almost feels like the franchise has avoided anything too controversial. Either way, Call of Duty World War II's campaign is gameplay-wise a fun time, but the overall narrative falls flat, and it really feels like there was potential to deliver a deep story, but the writers chose instead for a safe, happy ending flawed by events that logically made no sense at all. Now, we're going to move on to the central part of Call of Duty World War II, and that is the multiplayer. I have to start off by saying this is probably one of the worst multiplayer launches I have ever seen and been part of. The servers are absolutely dog shit, and the fact that this is a problem on day 1 and 2 after I don't know how many game launches for this franchise is just disgraceful. Hopefully when you're watching this review, the servers are no longer an issue because the actual multiplayer is a solid time. The new headquarters social space, which I guess is supposed to be like Destiny's Tower, is something that I think is really cool. There's a lot of different places to go to. There's a firing range, a place to prestige your division and weapons, an arena to duel 1 versus 1, a few areas to get challenges from, a place to throw loot boxes. Yeah. And also a rest and relaxation tent which has old school Activision Atari games, which is really just a nice touch. There are also a few other things, but it really seems like there was a lot of hard work that went into this social space, which can hold up to 48 players when it works. I do find it pretty shady how loot boxes are handled, with some challenges even being connected to watching other players open their loot boxes. For now, all the items are said to be cosmetic only, but down the road I'm not sure about that. Now, to the actual multiplayer gameplay, it is a pleasant return to boots on the ground, but with some pretty big changes. Instead of having a creator class like all previous CoD games, featured in World War II we have divisions. As you play through the multiplayer and progress these divisions, each tier comes with a new ability, and once you max it out you can prestige prestige your division, unlocking new weapons and other items. Now within each division we choose, we have the typical loadout with our primary weapon, secondary weapon, and equipment. We also have a basic training ability which serves as like a special perk with only being able to choose one, although each perk usually comes with a few features like sprinting sooner and no fall damage. Personally, I will say I'm not that much of a fan of this new system, as I much prefer the Pick 10 system which has been in previous Call of Duty games, which brings a lot more customization to our loadout. Once you make your way through the loaded multiplayer menu, you'll see Call of Duty World War II features your usual multiplayer modes with Team Deathmatch, Free-for-all, Kill Confirmed, and so on and so forth. Ground War mysteriously doesn't appear to return, which is unfortunate as that was one of my favorite game modes over the years. But we do get the introduction of War, which really is my favorite new addition, which emphasizes teamwork. Right now there are 3 missions in game and each of them supply a fun time. Usually these missions involve an offensive side which is tasked with various things such as retrieving gas, moving a tank forward, controlling a location, building a bridge, and if you're able to complete one of these objectives, your team moves forward to the next objective, and there's usually around 3 to 5 objectives needed to win, but with a time limit for each one. On the flip side, the defensive side is tasked with trying to hold off the attack and prevent the objectives from being accomplished in a certain amount of time. That's a basic description of the mode, but these operations, once you take part in them, provide a really fun and engaging time that is also probably one of the best ways to progress in the game. Again, like all Call of Duties, we have a variety of weapons to choose from, and the same for score streaks. Weapons seem to be pretty balanced, although I never remembered Granddad no-scope trick-shotting Nazis. Strange. Anyway, score streaks aren't all that impressive, with most of them being useless in my opinion, but I guess this is what you can expect from this era. Map design is pretty solid for most of the featured maps, although Aachen, which was in the beta, still seems like a mess of a map. Outside of just that, there seems to be a nice variety of large open to small maps, which encourage different types of playstyles. Overall, I will say the multiplayer is a good time. Is it anything revolutionary? No, but it does provide a solid experience, something that I haven't felt with this franchise in years. The only real annoyances that face this mode is the atrocious lag in loading screens, which I have to believe will be solved soon. Lastly, we have is the zombie mode, which is probably one of the best parts of Call of Duty World War II. It has a much darker feel to it, something that could be attributed to Sledgehammer Games founders coming from Visceral Games, which was behind the Dead Space franchise. This zombie mode also features a similar loadout screen to the multiplayer where we can customize the weapons and items that we choose to battle these zombies. Like most Call of Duty zombie games, there's a background story for us to follow as we complete tasks, and it's an easy transition from past Call of Duty zombie games to this, as all the in-game perks, special items, and the mystery box is basically back just in a different style. The zombies themselves look even more scarier, and at times I almost feel like some of the zombies were straight out of Doom. Either way, this zombie experience is a fun time, and you'll find yourself invested in the mode for a long time. Now before we get to our final verdict, there are a few other notes I want to add. The music and sound effects in this game are tremendous, whether it's from the horrifying atmosphere of Nazi zombies, or driving in a tank in campaign, or listening for enemy footsteps in multiplayer. Graphics for the most part were okay all across the board. There really isn't anything special about in-game graphics. The cutscenes, as I mentioned earlier, look great, but the actual campaign, multiplayer, and zombie textures are just okay. There was also a few technical hiccups and graphical issues I noticed in the single player campaign. Like for example, after I stabbed a Nazi leader, I could easily see my item I used to stab him with floating through him. The scene was supposed to be somewhat emotional, but that kinda just killed that vibe. As some of you know, I rate games on a scale 1 to 100, and Call of Duty World War II scores in at a 74, which I recommend maybe when it goes on sale. The campaign just ends up being extremely dull with a rushed narrative. Multiplayer and zombies are a solid experience, but nothing really that new or revolutionary for this fatigued franchise. Being someone who's almost disliked every Call of Duty game in recent years aside from Treyarch's, Sledgehammer does a good job bringing this franchise back to boots on the ground, but it just doesn't feel like it's enough. For younger players in which Call of Duty World War II may be your first or second Call of Duty game, this is probably going to be a blast. But for older players who have been with this franchise since say 2007, this really isn't anything new, and certainly not comparable to when this franchise experienced its glory days almost a decade ago. Sledgehammer Games certainly does their best at making a unique experience, and in certain areas like headquarters they lay the foundation down for future games in this franchise. At the end of the day, Call of Duty is still suffering from fatigue, and that can be contributed to a lot of factors. Assassin's Creed recently took a year off and revamped almost all aspects of the the gameplay. I really think this franchise is in need of a breath of fresh air because this formula just isn't hitting it like it did with Black Ops 1 or Modern Warfare. Either way, this latest installment does not make me confident about the future. Anyway guys, thank you for watching. Let me know what you think about Call of Duty World War II in the comment section below, and I'll see you later.